Good morning, everyone. It is 9 o'clock on November 10th, 2022. This is a public deliberation of the Baltimore County Board of Appeals in case number 21-184, in the matter of the Rosebank Avenue Group, LLC, the legal owner, Nicholas and Iris Maggio petitioners, 8209 Rosebank Avenue, regarding a petition for special hearing to determine the existence and legitimacy of a service garage in the ML zone, appealing an April 13th, 2022 decision of the administrative law judge wherein the petition for special hearing was denied. We had a public hearing on September 20th, 2022. Counsel for petitioner and the Rosebank Avenue Group have filed post-hearing memoranda and have reviewed them. I have reviewed both. We're on the record, so this deliberation is being recorded. The property is the petitioner's property, is their residence, and it abuts the subject property that is the subject of the petition. And this is an instance where there is a DR zone that abuts an ML zone. And creates two very different uses next to each other. As you can see, if you looked at the exhibits, the ML property actually forms a sort of L around the subject property. So it is zoned ML and it has ML land on two sides, Rosebank Avenue on one and the petitioner's residential property on the other. Property is in the southeast portion of the county, across from what used to be the Norris Farm landfill, which is currently not used. And there's some mixed uses, so it's one of those older areas of the county. So having said that, I don't see, and I've looked at the zoning regulations, both for the ML zone and the definition of a service garage, and reviewed all the testimony. I think it would be a stretch to find that this is a service garage, but I'm interested in hearing your views before I elaborate on that. Ms. Bernardi?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's difficult for me because looking at the definition, I think there's no argument that there are motor-driven vehicles that are being stored. There's testimony that they were being equipped for operation, repaired, or kept in some manner. And so it all went down for me to that last point. condition hire for sale. And I know that the testimony is that there was no money exchange. I think that was specifically what was there was no money exchanged, that the activity was all related to 20 plus or more family and friends, each having an average of 3 vehicles, for which Eppley was providing types of mechanic services, and that it was not for hire. So where I was challenged, because of course there was no evidence of any type of, you know, monetary exchanges that were entered into evidence, is whether or not I believe the testimony regarding whether or not there was any exchange of services or any type of consideration given. And so that's why then I looked at what was the definition of remuneration. And so it doesn't have to be some type of pecuniary or you know, actual monetary exchange. It could be any type of consideration given. And I did not ask the question. I would ask the question of whether or not there was any type of bartering type of exchange that took place. And so I am still challenged in that you would have all this activity and you would operate vehicles even if for a hobby. You would install an auto lift, have your barrels of red dye fuel, etc. on a property. And I just think the hobby would be extremely expensive to not actually receive anything in consideration for those services. But there's no evidence to the contrary, no, no contradict the testimony that was provided. So that's where I am challenged. I believe that based on the definition and the testimony that was given, then there would not meet the definition of a service garage. But I had some challenges on whether or not there wasn't any exchange for the services that were provided. And again, related to the credibility issue, I know I did ask a question about the red dye fuel because they're barrels of red dye fuel. The response was that it's being used for heating purposes, which in fact it is, then that's fine. But also know that often red dye is used for motor vehicles, and that would be a prohibition and violation of not just Maryland laws, but federal laws. So that again went to my concerns around credibility. And then I believe that there was testimony from, I think it was Ms. Roach, that there was at least an instance where she had a customer and her customer's vehicle needed service, and that service was then provided, mechanical services were provided. And I would then have to believe that that was done again free of charge when that was an actual, you know, business transaction that appeared to take place. So I want to hear everyone else's position, but those were the issues that I had regarding state.
Mr. Sampson,
Good morning.
good morning.
So looking at the definition, section 101 in the BCZR for a service garage, and pardon the outside noise, it sounds like the city is on fire right now. There's a lot of engines and sirens. That definition, as we've all read and is cited, is a garage other than a residential garage where motor-driven vehicles are stored, equipped for operation, repaired or kept for remuneration, hire, or sale. And then the manual that's been discussed in the hearing further says that garage service includes the use of any land or residential garage for the storage or repair of motor vehicles, includes the use of any land or enclosed building where motor vehicles are stored or repaired pursuant to the operation of truck rental, car rental, or taxi cab businesses. And on the one hand, I think that Mr. Gontram did a persuasive job and had an expert provide testimony, which to me seems to be in conflict with the letter of the zoning regulation regarding remuneration, which is to say that even if they're not receiving any, that doesn't by itself take them outside of this definition of service garage in the BCZR. But I also, in a very nuanced way, find compelling the arguments of Rosebank that break down these words and definitions: engine versus car, working on an engine versus a car. The fact that these are attempted to be described as hobbies in some respects. I mean, I think part of the problem is that there's multiple types of activity occurring here. But I find that the statute or the code is perhaps, as applied to this situation, ambiguous. And I don't find the ambiguity to, I don't construe that in favor of Mr. Gontram's side. And so I would come down on saying that on this record, I don't believe that there's been a showing that this is being operated as a service garage as it's defined in what I read.
I tend to agree with you. And having looked at all the exhibits, I think that there could be better screening and noise control, but I don't think it's a service garage. I think it's an active site with people coming and going. I think the businesses that are located there can be there, and the so-called the Middle Bay, the man cave. I'm not sure I'd go with the man cave theory, but the trying to find his name. It's not the partner who uses that bay testified that he works, was it 40 to 60 hours at the port, which would, in my mind, prohibit operating another business just because there are not enough hours in the week. And over the years, I've seen, well, let me also say that there have been at least 2 occasions, I think more, where there have been complaints and inspections by the county and the state that found no violations of either the state or local laws. And this isn't a site that's zoned industrially and has been for a long time and is used for uses permitted in the ML zone. And as I started to say, over the years, there have been legitimate complaints for people on their residential property maintaining non-operational vehicles, which are all violations. And to have, or a non-business to have a site where those kinds of things can be stored or worked on is something that the county has strived to have occur, where people were leaving junk vehicles on their sites, on their home residential properties. And I know that's not exactly analogous here, but just from a practical point of view, it strikes me as a more appropriate location for someone's hobby than a side yard, a backyard, a driveway in a residence. So looking at it both ways, I think the uses are permitted. I don't think there's a violation. I don't believe they're operating a service garage because there's no support that that there is remuneration, hire, or sale going on here. And I think there are inherent conflicts between unlike zones since the time the site was first approved 40 years ago. So I think there have been modifications to the zoning regs to provide some protection for residences. So my view is that it is not a service garage.
Concur.
And as I said, previously, I am challenged because there is no evidence that there is any of this is being done for hire or sale. And I agree that the manual doesn't supersede definition and BCZR. So I can also agree. I would like for a decision to at least include some comments around the activity that's taking place, um, and state the ambiguity that is in the definition and in the manual, just so that that's part of the record, if there was no objection to doing so.
So you want whatever decision, the written decision, to include specific language about the ambiguity of the statute.
Yes.
Anything else you want noted in the decision?
I do think when we lay out the facts that it's key that there's a high volume of this activity that appears to be, hobby. There's no, evidence that there's any remuneration that's taking place, but if it could at least include some discussion around the activities, then I would be satisfied.
And certainly, in my view, there could be better buffering between unlike uses. Some of that's just the anachronism that time has created, but okay. Then I think we are in agreement. We would affirm the decision below. And that concludes this deliberation, unless either of you have anything to add.
No, thank you, Chair Dobkin.
And thank you both. And if I don't speak to you between now and the Thanksgiving holiday, I hope you all have a great holiday. And
Thank
we are off the record.